Who are you going to be working with? Who are you going to be working for? What is the culture? Talk to people, over a beer, who are already working there. Do some intel, do some investigation, because bigger is not always better.
Sex, seniority, and salary in that order.
Rock on. You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
It's a show by professional pilots for professional pilots.
I looked back at them and I said, I don't think we're at the right airport. And they go, I don't think we are either.
Each episode, we bring you fascinating conversations with industry experts.
I think I should be a go-to on how to deal with 63, 64-year-old men.
You're going to chase it like a dog chasing a school bus.
But we're not just about the serious stuff. We're here to have fun.
Currently on an overnight in Orlando, and this is by far hell. This is the worst place on earth.
It's a whole thing.
The 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast is your destination for everything aviation, whether you're cruising in the flight levels or just starting your journey. All right, welcome back. It's another episode of the 21.5 show. Max, we brought in the big guns for this one. We get a lot of flight advice. Sometimes we can answer it on our own. Sometimes we need to bring in
the Diamond Dogs. Sometimes
That's
you need
right.
to bring in a couple Diamond Dogs.
That's right. We're so excited to welcome back Jenny Showalter and Jim Lara to the program. You may remember Jim and Jenny in the morning from some previous episodes we've done, and we're excited to have them back. Welcome to you both. Jim, how are you doing out in the Smoky Mountains?
We're doing great. It's just the beginning of fall here, and spectacular weather, so great for flying. But we're doing great here. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. And Jenny, is it still going well in Florida? I know you've been doing some speaking lately. Can you tell us what you've been up to?
I have. Yeah, thank you. I have spent the last 8 months of this year working on developing a keynote speech. It's a 45-minute keynote speech on career change. You own it, build a career that's ready for anything. And I've been lucky enough to deliver it 2 times in the last month. And it's been an exciting and very challenging journey, I might add. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, we've got a pretty good flight advice for you guys to handle today. So I'm going to jump into the email that we got from the listener recently, and then we'll discuss what they should do. All right. It says the title of the message is Unprofessional Operations in Part 91 Departments.
I've never heard anything like that before.
I know. It's the first time we're hearing about this.
Yeah, wow. There's breaking news here.
All right. The email says, I've spent 12 years and over 3,000 flight hours in a small one-jet corporate flight department and keep running into, in corporate flight departments, plural, and keep running into the same issue, a lack of professionalism in leadership roles, particularly with chief or lead pilots. The problems range from questionable decision-making and inconsistent operational standards to minimal briefings, weak CRM, poor checklist discipline, and in many cases, a total absence of SOPs. When I've raised concerns about unsafe or unprofessional practices, it's usually met with hostility or the classic, how dare you question me attitude. It creates an environment where people are encouraged to keep their heads down rather than speak up, which is not what I expected to be dealing with at this stage of my career. The company I'm with actually has strong upper management support for safety initiatives and good systems in place. Compensation and QOL are excellent for this aircraft and region, but unfortunately, operational leadership within the department isn't aligned with those standards. Despite attempts to have professional conversations and improve the culture, I keep hitting a wall. It's making it difficult to operate effectively as a crew and maintain basic safety practices. I'm someone who values a relaxed, team-focused culture, but there still has to be structure, accountability, and professionalism, especially when it comes to flight operations. The absence of that creates real operational risk. And unfortunately, I've watched incidents and operational problems happen because of it within my current operation. I'm at the point where I feel torn. Do I stick it out, hoping things will improve, or start looking for a potential larger, professionally run department with clear SOPs, strong CRM, and a safety-driven culture? My long-term goal is to work in a professional, laid-back, but by-the-book operation where I can continue growing as a pilot. I'd appreciate any advice for those that have been through something similar. This is a classic conundrum, Max.
Yeah,
I love that.
Sounds like he'd be a good airline pilot.
Yeah, I was just going to say, How many airline pilots have told you I'm professional but laid back? By the book. That's what everyone is going for. But sounds like he's definitely getting the full experience in a small flight, Part 91 flight department. Let's start with you, Jim. I want to first explore, you're at a place it sounds like he likes. He's well compensated. I'm going to assume he likes the area he lives in. The equipment sounds nice. The company sounds great. The operational leadership is the problem. Is it possible to maybe make an internal change when you're not, when you're maybe the bottom guy on the totem pole?
It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. And basically, you have to engineer a palace revolt. And if you're thinking about engineering a palace revolt, you better have plan B dialed in. So you have a parachute, because if it doesn't go well, you're going to get fired. And who you're going to appeal to is the reporting executive in the parent company. And if you don't have a strong relationship there, you're playing with fire. And you've been at this for 12 or 13 years, and it's the same story. Hope is not a strategy. So,
well, hold on, Jim. Make sure. See, there's an S in this statement that I missed the first time too. He spent 12 years and 3,000 flight hours in small one-jet corporate flight departments. So multiple jobs.
Multiple.
I read it the same way you did until Dylan read it and said departments. I was like, oh, he means like he's been in multiple departments over the 12 years and 3,000 hours. Because at first I was like, how are you not in charge at this point? Like, what? That's what started going through my head. But I think you made the same mistake I did.
Okay. Yeah. So let me modify what I would say then. If he's been in multiple departments, one of the things that, it's a male, right? It's he?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. One of the things he hasn't done is to assess what the culture is going in when he's interviewing for the job, and really assessing what the culture is. Because you're not going to change the culture. Either the culture is going to fit or it's not going to fit. And if it's not going to fit and you decide to go for that particular department, then you need to read the book Don Quixote, because you're going to be tilting at windmills forever. So that's a real stretch. But you got to remember, when you're interviewing for a job, they're interviewing you, but more importantly, you're interviewing them. Yeah. To make sure there's a match. But I'll tell you that the pro on this is Jenny. So let's hear what she has to say.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's be real, though. When you're interviewing, everyone's on their best behavior, right? They're on their best behavior. You're on your best behavior. And in some of our small flight departments, it's really hard to get a good handle on what culture really is before you're in it. And then it's sometimes too late. And, doing the same thing over and over again, isn't that the definition of insanity? I don't know. It seems like this person has been up against the same challenge a whole lot. And it is something we hear often. If I had a nickel for every time I heard of someone that was in a toxic work culture in this industry, I wouldn't probably be sitting here talking to you all. But that's where he is at this point, right? He's in this small flight department. And I just recently wrote an article. I contribute to USAIG's Premium on Safety newsletter, and I just did an article on small flight departments and some of their unique challenges that they have, especially that are cultural, that relate back to safety. And we see this a lot, that the corporate culture doesn't always filter down all the way into the flight department, or somebody in the flight department has the trust of the C-suites, the executives, the principals in the organization, and they're blind to some of the things that are not okay. But at the end of the day, for this listener, I would have to say it sounds like there's some things that are certainly bordering on unsafe operations. And it's your license, too, if your name's on that accident or incident report. And so if things are really unsafe and you're finding things happening that make you very uncomfortable, you have to think of yourself first and your career in the long run.
That's well said.
when Dylan and I started this podcast, the reason we started it is because we were both in small Part 91 flight departments, and we saw it not only with us and around us, is that it's easy to get comfortable and to not. There's no impetus to keep up on what's changing, what's going on in aviation. You go to recurrent, you check the boxes, and that's it. That's your. There's no other recurrency requirement like we have at the airlines or at Part 135. And so that combined with a lack of structure gives drift to people. And you've heard the term drift, right? They always say the Challenger accident, right? With the O-rings and the whole thing. So where you just, it starts small and it gets bigger and bigger over time, right? Until, God forbid, something terrible happens and they look and the chain of errors wasn't broken because of that, right? So this situation, I think, if this has happened, if you're looking for a level of professionalism you haven't seen, and you've flown over 12 years at multiple flight department and 3,000 flight hours, which you guys mentioned, interviewing the people you're going to work for, finding the right fit. And, he could be in the Southeast. He says he's in the Southeastern U.S. He could be in, Biloxi, Mississippi. Like there's just the pond isn't that big, right?
There's three airplanes in the whole town. Yeah.
You can do it. I'll tell you what, I will tell you one thing is being an airline pilot is my initial jet experience and having a long time being a Part 91 pilot and then going back to being an airline pilot is when you are an airline pilot, especially if it's your initial training to learn how to fly a jet, that stuff is ingrained in you. Like Dylan and I still remember, set missed approach altitude, V approach climb. Like I don't even remember what that's for, but that was for the Embraer freaking 20 plus years ago, right? Like there are certain things that get ingrained into you. So certainly if you interview somewhere and the chief pilot has some sort of airline background, I can tell you for sure there will be some sort of structure because it just doesn't leave you. It just doesn't. That's just the way it is. It gets so driven into you. But that being said, I think if you want to try and salvage the job before you go with the nuclear option here, I think you could try and perhaps visit our friends at Advanced Aircrew Academy and say, hey, we don't do a lot of extra work here to keep our knowledge current with what's going on, right? So maybe we enroll for $300 in the human factors and crew resource management, and that maybe gets the conversation started, right? You could try something like that. And I think, that will be your sign. If you guys go through this course, you spend a couple hours, he's like, that was really good. We should really start doing better pre-flight briefings, and we should brief the arrival better and the approaches. And, maybe if there's rain in the vicinity and the ceiling is below 3,000, we should brief the full approach rather than just the visual. And he starts talking like that, then that maybe there's something there. And if you get the opposite where it's like, oh, that was stupid, that was a waste of time and money, then there's your sign, right? Like things are not going to change. And I think, unfortunately, the latter is probably a higher probability than the former, but you never know, right? But I think moving forward, like if you decide to leave and find another job, you've really got to ask those questions, like you said, and if there isn't anything there, but they're open to it, maybe say, hey, as a part of my employment, I'd like to have a standards department. I'll write the manual. I'll do, you got to take some initiative to help promote those things because those things are never, I feel like those CRM and SOPs and all that stuff is never that popular to adopt. But once you're in it for a while, you see the value in it, and especially at the airlines when you fly with people you've never met before and you sit down and you're going to go fly a jet around all day. Like that's where the real value is. But when you're flying, like when I fly, I do that. And then I fly my small Part 91 flight department where 99% of the time I fly with the same person who is only doing Part 91 flying, but he also flew at an airline before. And we have a pretty, I would say a more rigid structure than most just because of that influence from the airlines. Like we always do a pre-departure briefing. We always brief the arrival. We always brief the approach or at least the visual. We like, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of call outs going on. There's a lot because frankly, for me, it's a lot easier to keep it consistent from what I say sitting in one airplane to the other. But Christian has caught on to that. And we both, we kind of, that's how we run it. And so I think if you look for somewhere that has the influence from the airlines or NetJets or something like that, that will carry through. And if not, you're going to have to find a way to try and lead with that.
That's going to be an important part of the cultural discussion, Max, because we have to remember that one of the bedrocks of culture in especially Part 91 is this concept that the FAA introduced years and years ago. It's called minimum standards. Minimum standards in my book is equivalent to a D+. And the well-structured, well-disciplined operations, Max, that you were talking about, that's a quest for excellence. And that's what it sounds like this person is looking for, is a quest for excellence. So you've got to look for the attributes that are going to contribute to that. Now, from a leadership perspective, we haven't done in the small flight departments, I'm talking one airplane, maybe 3 or 4 people, we haven't done a good job developing leaders. It's generally the next person standing that gets the lead role. And that doesn't mean that they've been developed. There's only 2 things that they like. They like the title and they like the money. But leadership is not part of that. So, but I think, Max, those attributes that you just nailed, that contribute to structure and excellence, it sounds like that's what this fellow is looking for.
Well, and I'd like to say too, if this person really is striving for excellence, just what you said, Max, go to Aircrew Academy and get your own course. If you can't take the person with you, go better yourself and take it with you. It'll make you more marketable if you have to make a move. And if you end up having to say something, if you do have to take this up the food chain at the organization, it gives you more credibility as well. And I would tell everybody, I sat in the Air Charter Safety Foundation's conference back in February, and we had a presentation by HopaJet about their accident in Naples. We had a presentation from the Lilies, whose son Sam was one of the PSA pilots in the midair over DCA. And I would challenge anybody here to find a safety conference. Regional groups put them on all the time. Here in Central Florida, we have ours coming up on the 17th of this month. Find a safety conference someplace and go and be part of that. Because if you want inspiration to be better and to do better and to have an SMS and to follow it and to have an ERP and to do at least the minimum standards, which some of these flight departments don't do, or better, then go sit in a safety conference and listen. Because let me tell you what, it sparked conversation in my group and between me and my husband sitting in that space, and he's part of a small flight department. So I think anytime that you can find a way to better yourself in this moment, I think that's better for everybody.
I want to circle back to one question that we talked about a minute ago. It is if you end up having to do the end around and you do have to go to the reporting executive at the company. I would say in both of your experience, it doesn't seem like that's a real successful play very often.
It's not.
Jenny, give me a scenario where you think it actually could be realistic that a regular line pilot might successfully be able to go around operational leadership and actually get some traction. Is there one?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure I have one. I have a lot of examples of some pretty egregious leadership faults in this industry and in flight departments from clients that come to me. And I've had people try to deal with them in all different ways. And I have yet to find someone who is really successful in making a change, because usually it would lead to the ouster of whoever was there. And again, in these situations, often the leader in the department has the trust of the organization. And I would say more often than not, if you do that end run and you go above your leader's head and to someone else in the organization, probably you're on the chopping block just as much as that leader that you're going to report on is.
I'll give you one, though, because we've seen this happen a few times. Not a lot, a few. When one of the senior execs develops a question in his or her mind of what's going on up there when they're in the back of the aircraft and they're seeing something that they don't understand or that they don't like. Now, one of the unique capabilities of a senior executive is that they can see through 6 or 7 layers in an organization. And in some organizations, there aren't 6 or 7 layers, but they are very, very perceptive. And we've seen those senior execs go to one of the flight crew members and say, I'm not real comfortable with what went on yesterday, and I saw the disagreement on the flight deck. Sam, what's going on? Now, when you get that question, I think you're obligated to tell the truth. But I think you're also obligated to tell your boss that you've been asked by his boss or his boss's boss to have a conversation. It shouldn't be clandestine. It should be up there. But if you are questioned, it's your professional obligation to tell the truth.
That's well said. All right. So we have a plan B. Sounds like.
Well, and I think
go ahead, Max.
I think a valid plan B in this situation would be NetJets or FlexJet. Like, I think that would satisfy like the structure. I mean, sometimes going to that, or like he's looking for like a larger flight department, and that's the one thing that Dylan and I have said is the thing we neither of us have done, is worked at like a Fortune 500 large Part 91 flight department. So do you guys typically see, when you have multiple pilots, it would seem logic, would direct you to have more SOPs and CRM and things like that to keep the consistency along the pilot group. Is that what you guys see typically at the larger 91 flight departments?
Mostly, but you can still have the same issues in the large flight departments. Just large doesn't always mean better. Large just means bigger. So again, it goes back to who are you going to be working with? Who are you going to be working for? What is the culture? Talk to people over a beer, who are already working there. Do some intel, do some investigation, because bigger is not always better.
Yeah, and I will tell you too, going to watching 1 2-hour course at Advanced Aircrew Academy is not going to turn the whole flight department upside down. Like at the airlines, how extensive this stuff runs is shocking. Like I have acronyms upon acronyms, ABCD, the RRM, the freaking, decide all this stuff that the yellow, the red, the green, we have all this stuff that all pertains to CRM and SOPs and all this stuff. Like it's literally, it starts huge and it trickles down. And I think the hope is that, some of it gets through. So I think that with pilots, it is an uphill battle because it is, it's a lot of extra effort that does not yield immediate value. Like it's a long-term deal. And I think that that's why it's hard and people are resistant to it. And I think that like you have to start with a pretty big freaking hammer to drive the nail at all.
Yeah.
This. And so it's just a little bit is not going to move the needle, unfortunately. And that's just human nature, I think, at the end of the day. And, aviation as a whole has come a really long way. Like even in the last 10 years, like things have changed a lot. I mean, about advocacy of the first officer and speaking up and, intervening if you have to, hitting the brakes, taking the controls if it comes to that. Like that is a thing now. That is driven hard. And so I think it's going to be hard. It's hard with these smaller flight departments to really get that. But I think part of that falls on the responsibility of one, the FAA, and two, the training providers, because if you don't train like you fly, you'll never You're never going to fly that way. And so at Flight Safety or CAE, which we both attended both, and there are suggested call outs and stuff like that, but they're very, very minimal and they're not enforced at all. And that's because the letter of the law doesn't say you have to. So, and to your point, Jim, we're training to the minimum standard, right? So that's what you're going to get is the minimum standard until we raise and the data is so overwhelming on that this stuff works and is valuable. The hope would be that it trickles and raises the minimum bar and the minimum standard a little bit, where at least there's required call outs is like, intercepting the localizer in the glide path and 1,000 feet above something. You have to start somewhere.
Right.
And so,
but Max, remember in Part 91, there's no attention paid to Part 91 by the FAA. Zero.
So true. Yeah. That's
zero.
Totally true. And again, it falls on the operator. It falls on you. And that, I'll repeat it, but that is why we started this podcast, because Dylan and I would do some of this outside learning and we would talk about it and we'd like, wow, we should really Dylan was like, we should do a podcast, talk about this. I'm like, that's stupid. No one would listen to that. And
no one still listens. No one listens, but we still do the podcast. Yeah.
I'm like, but if you want to record the normal conversation we have, then go for it. So,
one of the most salient questions I think that any prospective member of a flight department can ask or can ascertain is there a commitment to excellence in this organization? Yeah. And excellence is not easy. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. But you got to answer that truthfully.
And it has to be self-motivated. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It can't be because the boss is saying, hey, I want you to really run the best flight. Like, you have to want to do it. You have to be self-motivated to do it. And that's the thing. Like, let's be honest. Most Part 91 pilots, you have the time. Like, let's just say there's usually enough downtime. You could do something more if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but everyone's definition of excellence is different, though. So we don't have a standard for that. So you still get something that's kind of across the map.
Let's take a quick break to tell you about a friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. Tim is a certified financial planner who specializes in helping professional pilots chart a smarter financial course. Whether you're focused on retirement, investment management, or strategic tax planning, Tim brings the tools and insight to help you make the most of your career and beyond. He's also the host of the Pilot's Portfolio podcast, where he breaks down real-world financial strategies designed specifically for pilots. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life.
That's so a couple years ago, NBAA did a professionalism campaign.
Right.
And my comment to them was, everybody already thinks they're a professional. You don't fly with anyone that goes, I don't have my act together here. I'm a loose cannon.
We're good.
And my point was, you've got to convince people that, you can be better. And that's the beauty of what Max has at the airline, where he flies with a lot of different pilots and he can see a lot of different techniques and he can see a lot of different things. This guy did this terribly. This guy did this really well. Oh, wow, I should be doing this better. I really see an example. And that in business aviation at the small flight department, you just don't get that very often, right? And that's part of the drift that you see is because I'm flying with this guy. We already know what he or she's going to do when we get to the final approach fix. Whatever. Why would we talk about it? Because we do it. So that is one of the issues we face. But I want to shift gears for a second, Jenny. Let's pretend that this person is now your client, right? So they've decided, I got to go. We're not going to fix it. Jim and Jenny both say that there's a very little chance that I'm gonna fix what's wrong at where I'm at. So do you just look at the Fortune 500 flight departments down the street? Is that going to fix all of this person's problems? Or assuming they want to stay, let's say they're assuming they want to stay in business aviation.
Sure.
Where do you go from there? What's your plan B?
Well, first of all, the odds of this person coming to me with burnout is significant. right? If you're in a toxic work environment, you're 3 times more likely to experience burnout than somebody who's in a healthy work culture. So this person probably is experiencing burnout. They probably have had a dinged ego from working with somebody who was toxic, from not being heard. So that's usually one of the first places that I'm going to start. And I don't know if you all have heard about this new workplace trend. You know, it was quiet quitting after the pandemic, where people just weren't showing up for their virtual jobs and phoning it in. And now that's changed. And now they're saying that people are just experiencing burnout. They're showing up, they're doing everything every day, doing the job, getting the job done, meeting deadlines, and they're cracking. It's called quiet cracking inside. And so the chances are that I'm going to be dealing with this person on an emotional level at first, which I know isn't always what pilots want, is the touchy-feely stuff, but it's a reality. And if somebody's been in a toxic work environment and they are experiencing burnout, we have a little rebuilding to do, right? But then I would look at them and I would ask them what their motivators are. Do you need to live where you are? Because if you are in a 2-airplane town in the Southeast, then we have to look at some other options potentially. Yeah. If you need to stay there, is relocating an option? Are there other places locally that you could work? How is your network? Because you have to have those things in place in order to be successful with job search nowadays. The markets have been extremely quiet. The summer, very little hiring was happening. We're in September and October, which is typically, a stronger hiring season, but it really has yet to reveal itself. And so when you are looking for a new job, you need to make sure that you've really gotten yourself in a good place. So that's a strong network. It's a great resume. And it's also getting yourself into a more positive space. But as we said, bigger isn't always better. So if this person thinks a large flight department is going to fix it, I can't guarantee that. There are some wonderful large flight departments out there. There are also some wonderful small flight departments. But the bigger the flight department, the more layers, the more bureaucracy, the harder it is to get stuff done, the more personalities you have to deal with. So those are the kinds of things that I would talk about with somebody, is try to figure out what are the things that are most important to you. You've already got great quality of life and great compensation. Can those be matched at another operation too? Because my guess is you're not going to want to take a step backwards in those. So these are all things that we have to talk about before we really set a path for what direction this person would like to head and target. But those essentials of resume, network, they are the same for everybody who's looking for a job right now.
I feel like this person would be a really good person to run a Part 91 flight department. I think that should be the goal here. Like, clearly, if, he's got the experience, and given the first sentence of this email, and he has the drive for excellence, like you guys said. And so that's where you would shine the most, is to be in charge. And then you can run things how you want, and you can have the structure,
and you can feel how heavy the crown actually is, and you'll start to understand why your boss didn't do some things that you wanted him to do.
But I would also ask, what has this person done to position themselves for a leadership role? So, it's one thing to say they might be a great flight department leader, and they may well be, but just wanting it doesn't make you a great leader.
Well said. Jim, when this person is potentially interviewing at another operation, give us a couple of red flags when they're doing their investigation. You talked about you're interviewing the company when they're, when you're in that interview process. What are a couple of things if you're working with somebody and they say, "Hey, I saw this," and you'd be like, "Oof, I don't like this. Let's not make the same mistake again when we pick this next job." What are some things to look out for?
What is the expectation that the company has for you on crewing flexibility? So if the mantra is we provide a 3-hour response to every unscheduled trip, well, that might be a nightmare. Just might be a nightmare. So that's one thing. Second, we really don't believe in contract pilot use. We only use our internal pilots. Okay, so that means you're going to have more duty days. Well, how many duty days could I expect in a month? Well, normally, it's 17 or 18 duty days a month. Now, a duty day in my definition is anytime the employer has control of your time. So that's a duty day. Wow, 18 duty days a month? My goodness. That is a lot. And then one where we really have to get our budget in line here. So we're gonna change our training from 6 months to 9 months, and we're gonna do it on the weekends so we can get a better rate. Okay, so what's the most important thing? Well, certainly safety isn't, because that's the story of training. So you got to listen for these little hints as you're interviewing, both the formal interview and the informal interview. When you're walking around the hangar with somebody, take a look at the toolbox. That's what I do. I open the toolbox. What does it look like? Is it all shadowed? Or is it, oh my God, how can you find anything in here? How do you know that anything is missing? Yeah, so I look around for this kind of stuff. When they're talking to you about SMS, I ask them about, okay, so on your cleaners, do you have external cleaners that clean the aircraft? Yeah, we sure do. Oh boy, they do a great job. Gosh, that sounds great. In terms of tool control, what are those cleaners responsible for? Well, nothing. They don't have any tools. Oh, really? How about their rags? How about the cleaning bottles? Do you count those? No, we don't do anything with them. They do their own thing. I mean, those are the kinds of things that are oh my God, I got to remember that,
Interesting. Now, Max, for your specialty,
Go ahead.
This is the hardest.
I don't know what my
do.
specialty is, but go ahead.
This is it. This is it. And I don't know how to phrase this. Jim this is not going to be professional at all, and you're going to tell me later how to actually phrase this.
I would never do that.
How much juice do you have with the owner? I guess is really the question, right? And how much does the flight department leader have influence with the owner or the reporting executive or the principal, whatever term you want to use? This has been, to me, the most difficult thing to determine sometimes, but often the most important. So, Max, I don't know if you have any thoughts on ascertaining that and kind of determining where you're at.
That's a really tough one to assess without being in the. Yeah. I mean, how many days did you ski with the owner last year? Like, what are you going to ask?
Yeah.
How many bottles of wine have you drank with the owner in the past 12 months? Like what? Like there's no way to. I don't know. That's pretty difficult.
It's tough, but at the end of the day, can my boss tell the owner no, or we're not going to cut this department, or this is important, we have to keep doing this? I don't know, Jenny, if you have any metric on how to figure that out. This is almost an impossible question, but it's super important in my opinion, but how you figure it out. So I don't know, any thoughts?
Yeah, so it's really important. And I think we all know examples of flight departments where the chief pilot or director of aviation or whatever their title is has a hard time standing up to the owner, right? We've all experienced that to a degree. And on the way in the door, it's hard to identify what that relationship looks like. Again, everyone's on their best behavior. They're going to say, "Oh, I have total respect from the owner," but I don't. There's a clear line where things happen in the flight department, and where and if the owner says they want a pop-up trip to Europe tomorrow, or we're all on vacation that they approved and said, "Oh wait, no, we decided we want to take a trip," what are you going to do? Are you going to say no to the owner? I don't think so. They pay your salary at the end of the day. So it gets very murky. And I wish there was a clear answer. And we all know too, that companies, principals, high net worth individuals, they're all different and they all have different quirks and they all have different expectations. And, I'm not knocking leaders in our industry, because to be a director of aviation or a chief pilot for an operation like that, it is not easy. You're constantly walking a tightrope. So I totally get that. But it's really hard to ascertain that on the way in. And then once you're there, that's a unique relationship between the leader of the flight operations and whoever the principal is. And it's one that you have to tread very lightly if you want to disrupt it.
I think the other thing you can do is not so much try and ascertain that relationship as much as you can size up the person you're talking to, because I think that most airplane owners, businessmen, people like that, they have strong personalities and they
have the money for a reason.
Yeah. And they also respect people that, and their pilots and people that, hold their lives in their hands and make these decisions that could affect that. They want a strong personality type person is one that they respect and that they listen to more. And I think you can kind of get that vibe when you're talking to somebody in an interview. And because I think honestly, almost worse than having an owner that is over the top and doesn't like to listen to the leader in the flight department is having a yes man as the leader. That's the worst. And I've seen so many good flight departments that have so much potential to be an awesome job turn to shit because of somebody like that. We've heard it so many times, and that's the worst. That's the poison pill. Is the yes man who thinks that every time they save the owner $20 by getting the cheap hotel in the bad area of town, that they're the hero. Where by doing that they drive away other pilots, like maybe this guy, and then have to pay $20,000 for training. Like, it's stepping over nickels, or dollars to pick up nickels. It's idiotic. And these people that can't or can't, just the people that you can tell are yes man and are kind of weak leaders that don't have the right presence to have leadership. And that's, you're never going to win in that situation. It's awful. And we've seen, it's terrible. That's the worst thing I've ever seen, because we've seen owners that are so cool and have great job, nice airplane, great schedule. They go to fun places, and there's just someone that is just screwing it up for everybody, including themselves, and they don't even know it.
Go ahead, Jim.
So one of the things that we always try and help people with is in the flight department is understanding what the value proposition of the aircraft is for that organization, for the business. Why does aviation exist? How does it create value for that organization? And you get that from the owner, or you get that from the president, not from the director of aviation. You get it from the owner. Now, what aviation does is they take that definition of value creation and they create a service model that directly satisfies that value proposition. But it's not something that's touchy-feely. This is hardcore stuff. And it is that dominant executive who will set that definition for you. I'll give you an example. So this is a company in the Southern California, a lot of business in China. Pilots were going crazy. When we went to the flight department, everybody had dark black circles under their eyes. Looked awful. And so we had a conversation with the aviation reporting executive, who happened to be the CFO of the company. There were 5 execs that ran this multi-billion-dollar company. He was one of them. And so we asked him, I asked the aviation director, what's the value proposition? Why does aviation exist in this company? And he said, well, to fly people around. I said, well, I think we need to be a little bit more specific. So let's go meet with the reporting executive. Are you kidding me? Who do you want to meet with? The reporting executive. Oh my God, that's normally a disaster. Okay, so we got an appointment. We met with him. I asked him, Mr. CFO, how does aviation create value for this company? He said, we need our execs here and we need them in China because we have a lot of manufacturing in China. So the top value proposition for aviation is Southern California to Beijing and back in 30 hours. And we're using the airplanes as hotel. But that's how, so we have executives, that executive in both places. And, the reaction of the flight department was, holy shit, we can't do that. Beijing and back in 30 hours? No way. So we said, okay, if that's the value proposition, how do we crew it? So the answer was simple. TDY a crew in Beijing. So crew 1 takes the airplane over. Crew 2 is already in Beijing. They bring the airplane back. Crew 1 stays in Beijing, and they had 2 trips a week to Beijing. So, it worked out. But
I love that you said it's a simple answer, just TDY a crew in Beijing. So easy.
And they had 3 airplanes that were doing this. So but here's the point. You got to understand, how does aviation create value for the organization? Yep. And then what's the service model that delivers on that value creation? You do that, everybody's going to be happy because that's what they're paying for.
Well said.
They also, I've also gotten the answer, what's the value proposition? And the reporting executive said, for God's sake, no drama. That's the value proposition, no drama. So, run it like a business. Run it like a business within a business. It's not soap opera city.
And what Jim says is so important too, because he and I are working with a group of others in the industry because there has been such a rash of legacy flight department closures, Part 91 flight department closures, and so I think as we talk about this person who's having this toxic work environment in their flight department, I think it's also important to talk about the leaders in the flight departments, because they have to have some self-awareness, know how they're coming across to the people that work for them. I think that's always important. And we've talked about this before. It's a really hard task. But I think they also have to understand, as Jim said, their value proposition that they bring to the organization. Why do they exist? Because we're seeing Part 91 flight departments being approached and serviced by other sectors of the industry and closing their doors without the flight department even having a say in what is going on. They are just being told we're closing. As recently as last week, it happened to another one. And so I think, while this story isn't necessarily about the leaders, it is about them, but it's really for the individuals in the flight departments. I think we need to really have a big wake-up call for leaders in the industry. And it doesn't matter how you became a leader. It doesn't matter what size department you lead. You need to be aware. You need to be awake. You need to be talking to the people in your organization that you work for, and you need to be having good relationships with the people that work for you.
Every good leader manages up, manages at the level that he is at peer group level, and those that are in the organization that he or she is leading. And when you talk to a good leader, nobody will ever define those folks in the organization as those folks work for me. It's not how it works. It's a collaborative environment. It's a servant leadership environment that works the best. So that that leader is creating an environment where the folks that are in the organization function at their highest possible level. Not easy.
Not easy. Well, I think we're all in agreement for our listener. Unfortunately, probably time to strategically start thinking about moving on. Doesn't mean you have to leave tomorrow unless there's a bunch of safety issues where you're, really concerned, but do it with a strategy. And there are great opportunities there. I will say, after we talk about this for almost an hour here, you think like, who wants to fly in business aviation? Like, this just sounds like a headache, but I don't know. Max and I have been doing it a long time. We've done both. It's still really enjoyable. You have to be in the right situation, but there is a lot of reward to doing it. So I know maybe what we've talked about, there's been a lot of negative.
No,
but
it's a blast. It's the best.
It's great.
But you just have to you just got to keep your head on straight. It's hard sometimes in this business. It really is. And we've seen people just do some crazy stuff out of, I think, just like human nature, where they get too comfortable or overstep their bounds or just do. It's like, dude, just remember, don't make it difficult for the person that owns the airplane. With the drama, like you said, we've seen that too. It's like, dude, their job should just be to write the checks and you take care of the rest and keep the riffraff out of it. Just show up, the plane's there. And the other thing too, I think is important, Jenny, that made me think about when you're talking about people going to other solutions for their travel needs versus owning their own flight department. It's you have to manage with that in mind. Sometimes you do have to do a little more than just fly the jet. And to give people that full service kind of experience of owning the airplane. And sometimes that means when I see we can be helpful somewhere where we're just going somewhere and for example, and the principal has a meeting and he's just going to go there and come back. Rather than making the guy Uber or arrange cars, it'd be like, hey, look, we'll just grab a crew car. We'll drive you down there. We'll have lunch. We'll just pick you up and bring you right back to the airplane. That just little things like that. It's not that hard for you to do. You're going to go get lunch anyway and drive there. What's the big deal? Just having the little stuff where people just feel taken care of, and that it's that those are the things that you don't get at NetJets or FlexJet or things like that, or being dynamic and it's okay to tell the owner no, but it's also you need to have an alternate solution. Say, hey, here's what we can't do because the weather's bad in Aspen, but we can go to Rifle. I've already got a car figured out and transportation for you guys to the hotel, and then tomorrow the weather looks better. We'll stay in Rifle. We'll reposition the plane to Aspen so we're ready to go on Thursday. Just things like that where we're saying no, providing solutions, and just taking care of stuff so it's easy for people.
Max, when you don't do that, then from the boss's perspective, it becomes an A to B transportation from A to B.
Yeah, and there's a lot of solutions for that.
If it's an A to B, then it's a commodity. And how do you buy commodities? Lowest price. So that's why the value add has to be there. If you don't want to provide the value add, then you shouldn't be flying in business aviation.
Yeah.
And you know what? At the end of the day, business aviation is a wonderful industry to be a part of. I love it. I know all of you love it in your own ways. And I believe that generally speaking, people are good. People want to work. They want to show up. They want to do a good job. They want to be valued and appreciated. And unfortunately, not every opportunity brings that. But if the one that you're in doesn't bring that, go and look for another one because they are out there. They do exist. And, we just want to follow our passions.
So Kenny Rogers had a very popular song that has great advice line, a great advice line. And I'll give you this one, and I'll give you a Chinese proverb that also
know
applies.
When to hold them?
And know when to fold them. Know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Now, here's one from the Chinese that dates back thousands of years. It's very hard to make a fish run or a rabbit swim. So that's finding the fit in people. And you can't transform somebody who really isn't wired to be transformed. So it's very hard to make a fish run or a rabbit swim.
Jim, are you implying that people don't change?
I'm implying that people are wired very early on and then they don't change.
That is why you tune into this show for breaking news like that, the earth-shattering discoveries that we'll make only here on the 21.5 show. Jim and Jenny, an incredible hour with you guys. Really appreciate your time. I want folks to be able to connect with you, and I think there's some opportunities in person. Jenny, you're headed out to base, I believe. How can people find you out in Vegas?
I am. I will be in Las Vegas. I'll be in the Military Connect in the Career Zone at NBAA, and I'll be doing some speed coaching with folks in both. And you can always find me on LinkedIn, Jenny Showalter. I'm pretty active there. And if you want to meet up at base, send me a message.
Hold on, Jenny. What is speed coaching?
Speed coaching. Well, we're going to probably do some combination of things, but one of them is going to be give me your elevator pitch. I'm looking for eye contact, handshake. I want to hear what you have to promote. I also want people to work on their skills because skills are so important. It's important to know the value that you bring, and your skills are a big piece of that when you're looking for a job. So we're going to be kind of giving a little quiz here and there. And
could you teach our kids' baseball coaches how to do that? Because these hour-and-a-half practices are freaking killing me.
You want speed coaching?
I tell you what,
30 minutes.
I am so lucky that my two children, I was a sports kid, and I'm so lucky that like I have a theater kid now, and we don't have to do all of that. So you never have.
All right, guys, sit down. Shut up. Here we go. Let's go. Quick.
Jim, I have. It sounds kind of like you're going to bring in a therapist's couch at NBAA to your little area. Is that basically right? Are you going to be doing a little pilot therapy, flight department manager help?
Yeah,
what's going on?
It will not be an inflatable, though.
Okay.
So we're going to have 30-minute sessions that folks can sign up for. The calendar will go out soon. And the whole theme is what's going on? What do you want to talk about? And it's a little bit like therapy, but it's more like let's focus on some realistic solutions for you. So it's 30 minutes, no charge, and just happy to meet everybody who's going to be at base.
Jim,
One
I'm going to
Chinese
show up.
proper beach.
I want you to explain how to get a mustache like that in 30 minutes.
It comes with Elmer's glue in the morning.
See, don't give away your secrets. Wait till our session. I'm going to bring a pen and a pad and get to the bottom.
The only thing, it's a risk here in the Southeast because we get a lot of thunderstorms. So got to look out for the thunderstorms.
That's right. I love it. Well, I guarantee you 30 minutes spent with either Jim or Jenny will be time well spent at base. So go track them down when you're there. We'll have all their contact info in the show notes. Really appreciate your time and perspective from both of you guys. Hopefully this listener gets something. And now to the listener, your job is to let us know what you decided. What did you do? Keep us posted. Hopefully you found this conversation valuable. All right.
And if you're the yes man that's ruining a flight department, put yourself on notice, okay?
That's right.
Look at yourself in the mirror and make some changes.
That's right.
Max is coming for you.
That's it. That's our public service announcement for the day.
That's right. Okay. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much, Jim and Jenny. Till next time, remember,
flexibility is the key to air power. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.